or say, what? Yesterday, the Celtics officially welcomed Kemba Walker and Enes Kanter. Kanter was asked an
That should be your
question.
When you come into a room, you should be like,
say, what?
There you go. Run with that.
Why did you pick number 11?
Well, it was my old jersey number, by the way, number 11. And I want to be the reason that no one else will. I had to say it.
So
Is anyone else to wear it?
It's the
Kyrie.
Nike
That was a
commercial.
callback to the Nike commercial. Remember, Kyrie going to hang it in the rafters.
I don't
so
want
no
anyone
one
else to wear
wears
number
the
11.
And then they just give it to Enes Kanter.
Listen,
Yeah.
between that, between the jokes with your hair, between the things he tweets, he's got a sense of humor. He may not have any defense, but he's got a really good sense of humor.
People love Kanter until he starts playing for their team.
Okay.
And then not so much. He's very, very high approval rating until he steps on the court for a team you're rooting for. Then it slowly dips.
That's like Nick. They like him till they meet him.
That's actually,
true. I like
found
him
the
very
opposite's
much.
true. People don't like me because I come off brash and arrogant on television. Then they meet me and they're like, wow, that's a really good guy.
I get that a
I
lot.
like him. Yeah, absolutely. How about that, Chris?
Okay, no problem. Stay woke.
That's what it do. Moving on to Baker Mayfield, who's never been one to shy away from the limelight. He loves it, and it loves him, from winning the Heisman to being selected first overall by the Browns. And with more hype surrounding his team than ever before, he's once again not shying away from who he is, saying, quote, I'm going to be myself, and I'm going to believe in that, and if you don't like it, well, that's okay. So, Chris Carter, what do you expect out of Baker Mayfield in the transition from year 1 to year 2 in the NFL?
I think he's going to be successful. I think there are a number of quarterbacks that we've seen, not only in the NFL recent history, but over the last 10 years, that quarterbacks and running backs, they can have success in the NFL
instantly
right now. Why? Because you can't hide the talent, just like we kid you about your diamonds. You can't hide the money.
You have diamonds.
You can't hide a talented quarterback, and that's what we were able to see. Even though at the beginning they held Baker back, Tyrod Taylor let him start. Baker comes on, starts to save their season. They start to run the ball. The offensive line gets better. Him and Freddie Kitchens have tremendous chemistry, and then they go out in free agents and start adding players. And I just believe not only OBJ, we talk about him a lot, but what they're doing on the defensive standpoint, Steve Wilkes coming over, Arizona is a former head coach there, former defense coordinator from Carolina. They have great personnel on their defensive front. Their secondary, one of the best young secondaries. So Baker's going to have a tremendous opportunity. To me, I just don't want him to try to force the ball because he understood the NFL from what he got last season and try to force the ball into traffic, start turning the football over. But I expect Baker to build on what he did last year. I expect him to have a successful season. Nick and I both have him as an MVP candidate.
Yep.
That's what the Browns fans should expect from Baker Mayfield, Nick, in year number 2.
Look, if this team's what we think it is, which is elite front defensively, maybe the best defensive line in football if everything falls right, with Myles Garrett, Larry Ogunjobi, they bring in Sheldon Richardson, they bring in Olivier Vernon, got a good back end anchored by Denzel Ward. The offensive line last year, Baker's first 7 starts, sacked 22 times. The next 7 games, sacked 3. So either he figured something out, they figured something out, and I know it's not the exact same offensive line as last year.
No, I think that's the most important unit, not the most talented, but the most important unit. If you want to judge Baker, how he's going to do in year number 2, you'll be able to look to that offensive line, Nick.
The running game will be better. We know Nick Chubb's good. They'll have Kareem Hunt for the second half of the year, and obviously the receiving core gets better when you bring in Odell Beckham Jr. And so if Baker is the guy who they took 1 overall, who showed us what his talent level is the second half of last year, then let's look at, in recent history, what great quarterbacks have done in year 2. Russ went 13-3, posted a 101 quarterback rating, and won a Super Bowl. Colin Kaepernick, I understand he's thought of differently now. At the time, he was a great young quarterback.
I didn't realize that was his second year, Nick.
Second year.
Wow.
Took over midway through the year, went 5-2, a 98 rating, and went to the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz, 11-2 until he got hurt. 101 rating, looked like the league MVP. Patrick Mahomes, 12-4, a 114 rating, league MVP, went to the AFC Championship game. That was their second year for all those guys. Well, Baker's got the talent. They're in a winnable division. If Freddie Kitchens can handle the job as a first-time head coach.
If he can handle the job as a head coach that he did as an offensive coordinator.
Correct.
We know it's more work.
Then why wouldn't the Browns be 11-5, hosting a playoff game in the division and then into the divisional round of the playoffs, one of 8 teams remaining with a chance? Like, wait, this team could do what the Chiefs did under Mahomes, not the record-breaking offense, but get to a conference championship game. To me, that is absolutely on the board for a team as well-rounded as the Browns with a quarterback as talented as Baker.
And there are a couple things to question. Last year, they had the 5th easiest schedule in the AFC. Going to be a little bit tougher this year. And can they consistently run the ball? Last year, that was the litmus test for the team. When they ran over 25 times, they were 6-1. When they didn't run it 25 times to be able to support the quarterback and help him out, they were 1-6. So those are a couple of things to watch for.
Nick, I know you love Baker Mayfield's personality. I know that's something that doesn't bother you at all. Is there any concern for you whatsoever that something like that could rub poorly if the team starts not playing well? Maybe there's suddenly a target on their back if he starts talking about other teams coming in?
Well, listen, Baker gets a special level of dispensation that we haven't given to other quarterbacks. I'm not sure exactly why. He was allowed to get away with some things in college. Other guys would have been more heavily criticized for. The taunting of Hugh Jackson, I think was probably unnecessary. Felt like he was punching down. I understand Colin pokes at him. We would expect most quarterbacks to not get into a feud with Colin Cowherd, even if Colin's the guy poking at him. And then he just recently took some shots, it seemed like, at Giants fans unnecessarily defending Odell or promoting Odell. None of that will matter if they're winning. If they lose, what's cute becomes what's the word? Gauche. Like, what's cute? We change things. The same exact behavior is judged differently if you're winning or losing. They instantly won with Baker last year. The team looked better, and it just seemed to be his personality. I've never had a problem with this type of player. Other people do, but it might just be a new age of quarterbacks, and he just might be a different type of guy.
No, he's a different guy. We need to judge him to be different. I think Colin's problem with Baker is Colin is from a school of thought. They want their quarterback to look a certain way, and I don't mean being white or black, but they want him to look a certain way. They want him to play a certain way. They want his sound bites to be a certain way. That's why people love Russell Wilson. But we can't expect every quarterback, all these millennials. What's the generation after millennials?
Zennials.
Yeah, I never even heard that mess before. Like, we expect them to act the same as Tom Brady, as Peyton Manning, as Eli Manning? No. We have to give that position room to evolve to other personalities can play it, because we're in a bad spot if you have to be this way and you have to act this way to play quarterback in the NFL. Baker Mayfield is a football player. He's a leader. He's almost got a photographic memory. Guys follow his lead. I think the biggest challenge would be when defenses have, yes, they do have a half a season of film on him. He has more talent than a lot of quarterbacks can work with. How does he distribute the ball? And how do I throw the ball to this guy but say something to this guy and make both of them feel good? I think those are the things that Baker's going to have to learn, and that's an art form that the great ones always are able to do, so that when you get late in the game, you're like, oh, okay, the quarterback has made me feel as if I've already caught 7 or 8 passes during the game.
All right, let's talk some basketball before we end the show. They're still looking for suitors. That is the Oklahoma City Thunder for their newly acquired point guard in Chris Paul. Here's what's working against the Thunder. Chris Paul's 34. He's on a 3-year, $124 million contract, and his game is on the decline. But here's what's working for the Thunder. Chris Paul's got a great nickname, and right now, at least, he's healthy. Recent reports, there's increasing expectations that he will start the season with the Thunder. Nick, Thunder don't have much of an option here. He's most likely going to be with them. So how good of a fit is he on this team, and what can they do with him? Well,
yeah, I mean, this is not ideal for them at all. And I think it will continue to put some context on what the Rockets were able to do moving off Chris Paul, attaching a couple picks, and getting a player even flawed as good as Russell Westbrook is. And we'll see how that fits. he makes too much money, and he was too unproductive and injured last year for there to be a major market. Also, he came available at the wrong time. If the Russell Westbrook trade had happened when the Anthony Davis trade happened, for example, before free agency opened, before the draft, then I think OKC would have been able to find a suitor. But when 40% of the league is untradeable by rule right now because they just signed contracts, there's a limited number of teams that have the contracts to trade to make it work that think they are a Chris Paul away from a championship and want to sign up for $124 million remaining on a 34-year-old, 6-foot even point guard's lifespan.
Whose game is seemingly on the decline.
Now, I know Chris Paul believes, man, I'm the player I was 3 years ago. Let me show the world when I'm not playing next to James
Even
Harden.
if he wasn't the player he was 3 years ago, he's better in his mind than he is right now.
Right, than what he's being viewed as. Playing alongside Harden limited the ability for him to show everyone what his ability was. But for the Thunder, why they're in such a rough spot, Chris, is contract aside, Chris Paul's a good player. He will help you win games. The Thunder don't want to win games, and their best young asset on their team, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, is a point guard who needs to be playing with the ball in his hands. So they will move him eventually, but it's going to be awkward, and it's going to take a few months, and we're going to get into late December, early January, where they're going to be a way station for Chris Paul, which is something he's never experienced in his career.
Yeah, you made a couple great points earlier in the show. One of them was that 2 of the 5 players now all throughout the NBA, they're not available.
Right.
The other point you made, that 40%, for those watching, to stay the same
2 out of 5
numbers.
is 40%.
Yeah, those are 2 good points you made earlier in the show. But Chris Paul, you mentioned the age, you mentioned the contract, but coming off a horrible year. Career worst, scoring, shooting 41%. How many three-pointers he had a game? Only 3.5, and his turnover rate was the highest. So now, you mentioned that age, this young team, they need to lose to be able to benefit from those picks. They're stuck with him, at least for the first half of the season. I believe they'll trade him somewhere else.
And listen, and for him, the next place might not be much better. Like Minnesota is going to be in the market for him. Either way,
Minnesota's better than OKC.
Okay, but they're not
careful what you wish for if you're Chris Paul.
People there are real nice.
We got to go. We're back here at 6:30 a.m. Eastern tomorrow.